Okay, this is the first place I'm sharing about what I've been quietly working on. It's called the Mental Fitness Blueprint. It's a 90-day, deeply personal map for training your mind to work for you, not against you. And I'm opening this up to just 50 founding members. So if this podcast has ever helped you slow down or see yourself more clearly, this is your invitation. Details are in the show notes or at mchampagne.com. Who are you?
Whom? So thank you. Good question. Thankfully, I have a wife who will tell me if I ever don't know the answer to that question. No, I'm a humanist in that I think what makes me tick is around human problems and human solutions, and in particular, how storytelling becomes a vehicle that we connect, that we share, that we grow. Um, this point in my life, I think the things that I'm mostly concerned about is just how we all relate to each other and how we go on this journey of life together, and how we share stories and together, because stories are, again, how we connect and how we grow, and how we learn. So that's kind of where I'm focused right now. And I'm a dad and
Yeah.
a husband and a grandfather, and all of that is
Oh, you're
super
too
awesome.
young to be a grandfather.
Yeah,
Gosh.
I am a grandfather, and have two more coming. So that just tells you.
Wow. Congrats,
Thank you.
congrats. I love I love the humanist part. Tell me more a little like when 'cause the nice thing I find with a "Who am I?" question, obviously it evolves over time, right? There are key characteristics, usually there's some through lines, but, if I ask you the same question in 5 years from now, there's probably be, some difference in your answer just because of natural evolution in your path and so forth. But when did you first kind of land on the idea of this humanist? 'Cause I like that.
Thank you. Ironically, it was as a pre-law student, meaning
Oh.
I came right, which you don't necessarily put those worlds together. But I had come out of high school just thinking I was going to go to law school. Was on the debate team and things in high school, so I was like ready to go. And in the course of declaring myself as a pre-law major, ended up taking a philosophy class on the humanities side, and the professor pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I think you've got some energy and talent. In this world. Have you ever thought about being a philosophy major?" And I said, "No, I actually would like to be employed. I'm thinking
Yeah.
the opposite. I'm thinking about being an attorney." And they said, "Well, let me show you something." And they took me back, and they had an LSAT, law school admissions test, record of, and it showed like scores by degree, and math and philosophy majors scored highest on the LSAT. And so I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
So I declared myself as a philosophy major on my way to law school, and then through that, just discovered this world of thinkers and philosophers and writers. And I had an English minor, so I was reading as well, and just abandoned law school completely through
Yeah.
that process and decided to do something else.
So we're so interesting. At that time of your life then, were you nervous given the plan was kind of hijacked, but, like or was it just pure kind of excitement and this felt aligned?
It was a mix of excitement and just being naive around graduating and going to a career fair with a philosophy degree. Like, wait, where's the booth for newly graduated philosophy majors? Like, I didn't see it.
It's in
Uh,
Athens.
yeah, and so I think I loved school so much. I loved just studying. I loved the pursuit of taking classes. My dad would accuse me of wanting to be a professional student because I took 10 years of meandering to get my bachelor's degree. Part of that was I did some volunteer work. Part of that I also enlisted to get the GI Bill, so I was in the National Guard. So I had some moments, but I loved being a student, and so I guess I was a little short sighted in that I just enjoyed it so much. I figured I'd go to grad school or do something, but I just loved the process so much. I just stopped worrying about the outcome, right?
Mm,
I just
yeah.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it tremendously. Like, I loved being a student.
Did you ever dream up or think that you'd be the one providing a lot of the material for students to come through your writing?
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I felt a pull towards teaching. I thought I might go get a doctorate and maybe be a professor because I really loved that. And then when I did go to grad school, after having 2 kids and a philosophy degree and, like, I need to do something that earns a living, I was a student teacher, teaching writing, in college, so,
Oh, okay.
I felt a draw there, and then I discovered some of the politics of higher education and thought both, "Don't love this," and, as I was starting to have kids, I was married at that point, like, I need to find a career path, like, I my wife's tired of being broke all the time, right?
Yeah.
So, I found this instructional design, program, so my undergrad is in philosophy, then I did a double master's in English, and also instructional technology, which is an education design, behavioral psychology degree.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and then, so when did books come in? Writing, ghost writing, like your own books? I mean, screenplays. How did that all enter into the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I've always loved writing. I failed creative writing in high school. So just an indicator that don't let, a high school teacher determine your future.
Yeah.
Now I failed it for good reason, and I don't need to get into that, but I failed it nonetheless. But what's crazy is I had a middle school teacher, and I actually, in one of my first fiction books, I think I dedicated it to him, because he just pulled me aside and just said, "Had I ever thought about being a writer?" Like, it was some English class, and maybe I was in, whatever, 8th grade or something, and no, but for the first time, I thought, "Maybe you could do this," and I love
Mm,
doing it, and so, I've just always loved writing, so even though, like, for example, when I went to, graduate school, in instructional design, I did not intend to get an English degree as well, but I had submitted a story for a creative writing contest, and then I ended up winning that, and the department pulled me aside, and they're like, "Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you," and, convinced me to get a double master's and said, "Well, how about if we give you a job in an office and parking and, and a partial scholarship?" I'm like, "Okay." So writing has always been either in my back pocket, it's certainly been part of what I love to do, and then I just had a spouse, my wife was just th super supportive, and she would get on me like, "Why are you not writing? Why are you not
mm,
doing," I was starting to dabble in screenwriting, I can sort of talk about that a little bit, but she just encouraged me, and so
yeah.
I had the desire, but I was in a career path, and then at one point I just decided I'm just gonna write. So I wrote my first book, fiction book. I was working full time, so I just wrote, nights and weekends, and I honestly thought it was so intimidating a little bit writing a book, getting to 55,000 words or whatever. I just
Mm.
thought I'm
Especially
overthinking.
fiction. I feel
Yeah,
like fiction is terrifying.
it yeah, and it just feels like you don't, I don't know, like it's such a tough business, and like you would never do it if you looked at the odds of like what's chance of making
Yeah.
money as a fiction author, right? So, but I did it, and I just took all the governors off. I just thought, and I had, kids. I have 7 kids, so I've, big family, and I just thought, if I'm writing and reading something to my kids, what would I think is funny as an adult, and they would think is funny as a kid, right? So I'm like, where can
Mhm.
I bridge that humor? So I wrote that book, and I broke all kinds of rules. And really, in my mind, I just thought, I'll write one and get it out of the way, and then I'll figure out how you actually write a book, and then I'll do something commercial. But um, I was in a writers group, and they all kind of loved this book, and I sent it off to an agent. Just okay, picked up an agent within like 2 weeks. Sold the book to Simon and Schuster within another 2 weeks, did a sub
Wow.
rights deal with Scholastic, all in total, so the book's called Bad Unicorn, which also I hated the title. but they were bad. They were right. That was right. So, but uh, has done probably about 250,000 copies between Scholastic and
Wow.
Simon Schuster. Aladdin was the imprint. So anyway, that was long
Wow.
answer to doing all that sort of in addition to being a dad, being full time
Yeah.
employed, right?
Well, so that's what I was gonna ask. So, first of all, I mean, for those listening, you can make some assumptions like I don't know what the actual stats are, but I think probably most books sell probably less than 500 copies, if not, probably less than that, right?
I think it's less than I mean it's actually like under 10. Like
Yeah,
it's really bad. Like it's
it's really bad.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to come like that's why like obviously people know me from on the nonfiction side and dabbling in fiction with another with someone, and that's why I say it's terrifying. But like you really have to want to do it, and it's got to become from a place of like, yeah, I just need to get this out because again, like you said, the odds are stacked against you. But then I think if you can kind of navigate those waters like a little bit more lightly and loose, like what you're like, we'll see what happens. You're
Yeah.
gonna put it out there and look at the flow of that, right?
Yep.
But the question that does come to mind, so you're selling you know, all of these books. Do you still have the other job? Like, what's going on in your life at that time? Like, when did you make the full transition?
So when I've sold and what's funny is I had written the one book, didn't think it would sell. My agent calls me back. They're like, "Hey, Simon Schuster wants it. They want a trilogy. Have you thought about 2 other books?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "You have 30 minutes to think about the 2 other books, to write up a
Before
proposal."
AI.
Yeah, before AI.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want you to create like, a sense of, yes, this is a trilogy. Here's the 2 other books, and we're gonna submit it. And so, this is why you have an agent, right? So
yeah,
I did all that, and they ended up buying all 3. So they bought the trilogy, even though I had literally just, made it up in the moment, the spur of the moment. And she's like, "It doesn't matter. Just they just want to see that you have a vision of where this could go." So I got an advance, and it was I will tell you that there really is no good reason to quit your job, to write, and often when I'm doing, like, Comic-Con panels and different things, people will come up like, "I'm gonna quit my job and write." I'll be like, "You know what? Don't quit your job, but write." Because I do get the sense of, like, burning the ship a little bit. You just have to be very careful and intentional. So for me, I had an advance and I guess the way I looked at it was, again, this was, no, you would not put this on paper and this would be a good decision, right?
yeah.
I was in an executive position. I was making really decent money at the
Mhm.
time. I told my wife, "Hey, I'm going to take this advance, which isn't going to get us a
Yeah,
year."
it's not like a year's salary. I think
No,
that's another
no, I'm
illusion that I
gonna
think people have.
I'm gonna give up my benefits. I'm gonna give up my secure employment. I wanna chase this dream as a writer, and, I said, "Here's the thing, though, I think I can get a job." Like, I think I can always get a job because 'cause I've just been doing the thing that I do in the industry. But I don't wanna be at the end of my life and think, I had a shot and I didn't go for it." I'd rather go for it and fail and then find
Yeah,
another job than just live with that regret. And fortunately, my wife was, "I trust you 100%, just do it." So I quit my job and
wow.
I doubled down into writing full time. This is like 2011,
Okay,
2010, yeah.
wow. I can just see if I had her on the show, I'd be like, "Actually, I said that, and then I went to the other room, like, he's crazy."
Yeah, I mean, I get like, because usually your spouse is really supposed to be a governor a little bit to like, "Hey, buddy, here is the
Yeah,
household finances." Like she was just, she's a math major. I was, English
okay.
major. So, kids don't ask me to do the budget. Don't ask me to like
Yeah,
do math homework, right? I'm not the guy.
yeah.
And so you'd think she would be like, this does not make sense, but just, she's awesome.
It's
And
it's so important.
yeah,
Yeah. I've said it a few times on this show, like, same thing with my wife. I mean, I would've I almost threw in the towel actually 3 months before my first book came out because the the publisher essentially was going under, or they had another
Mhm.
business that they were restructuring, and I was actually working for them and lost my job, and then I'm like, "I'm done, like, I'm just gonna start applying for jobs at, like, Headspace and Calm or something like that in this space," and she's like, "You didn't spend the last year and a bit writing this book to not give it a proper go,"
Yeah.
and, like, those are those, like that was my moment with her around, "All right, she's got my back here, like, I need to, trust and build that confidence and just kinda go for it as well," right?
That's
Because it
awesome.
coulda went the other way. Coulda
Yeah.
went the other way, so and literally, you and I wouldn't be talking, I mean, the
Right.
all these kind of cascade of events and so forth, so okay, so you go for it. What, like I guess what happened next in that story? Like, for I mean, you spent the 30 minutes to craft the series, obviously, but, like, for you in your writing process, and I know this is specific to you, like, where do you even start? Let's just even say with a fiction, and I know you obviously you've done nonfiction as well, and you've written other people's books and so forth, but, like, in general with projects like this, you go to the desk or like, what does that look like? How do you start?
Yeah. I think that the and I think there's some really good books on like the actual tactical art of writing, and
Mhm.
taking it into some best practices. So, like, Stephen King's on
Like
writing
Stephen
is great.
King. Yeah.
Stephen Pressfield's book, is
Mhm.
great. What is it? The War of Art.
War of Art,
Uh,
yep.
I love that book as well. And there's just some practical advice. For me, it's very much I just feel like you have to write for an audience of one, and you're writing it for yourself, and maybe that sounds selfish, but it honestly, when you try to predict the industry, if you try to predict what editors are going to want, I mean, I think it has to be this joyful kind of creative act that you would just do it anyway, alone in a
Yeah.
room with no upside. You would just do it because there's something that you grow from this creative investment and bringing something into the world that just didn't exist. Even if nobody reads it, even if you send it to your mom and she's the only person that ever reads your book, who cares, right? Because you've
Yeah.
created it, you've put it out there, and I think when I've gotten in my own ways, when I've tried to think too commercially about it, I did like, oh, what's the trend? Oh, it's this YA trend, or it's this trend in middle grade, right? And so
Yeah.
that's when I got in my own way. So really it becomes selfish in a way, but also part of that selfishness is tapping into that human authenticity is what hopefully makes it resonate with others. And then you just sort of let it go into the world because then you lose, it's not yours anymore, right? And so when you
Yeah.
put that book out there, everyone who reads it becomes a shared author with you. They are sharing in the creation of meaning, right? They are visualizing the characters, their voices, you're just part of the constructive process. The reader's the other part.
Yeah.
So knowing that that part of your job is to just turn that over and let people take it. And some people will take it places you don't like it, and some people will not like your work, and that's okay. Right.
Mhm.
So I think all of that is what fuels me. Everything that's the opposite of thinking about it like a business. Like, I just don't think of it that way.
Yeah. I do wanna ask you about that because, I mean, I'm in that right now, as you know, with just pitching the book and so forth, and this doesn't I think this applies, further than just the authors or writing. I think, really, definitely in any kind of creative endeavor where it almost feels like a bit of a dance of, like, how do you balance, I guess, the fact that, of course, you wanna get something out there, you wanna be true to the vision and what you see is the book or whatever the project is, but then there's also a reality of, okay, it's almost like you gotta play the game a little bit of the business, right? And
Yeah.
I find, like, I'm in that right now when I think of the book proposal and, like, there's things in it that just kind of annoy me. I'm like, "Why do you wanna know that? Like, when I'm gonna have to do the promo, really?" Like, you know? And it's but so it's like, how do you balance that? It's a bit of a
I
tug of war.
Yeah, and it's an excellent question because I think you could take that sort of initial advice of mine and says, "Great, I'm going to go write haiku poetry to my cat and publish that because that's what, moves me.
Yeah,
Great. Okay.
yeah,
But now if you wanna make a living at it, right? So now you have to think a
yeah.
little strategically. I love the way that, they actually teach, with kendo, with sword fighting, this art
Mm,
and this idea of how hard do you hold on to it? And I
ooh,
think of this as a balancing act a little bit. How hard, sorry, do I hold on to the sword? And they said, think of it like a bird that if you hold too tight, you strangle it. And you can't move, you can't be creative, you can't be artful, you can't be quick and responsive.
yeah,
Too loose, you let it go. The bird flies out of your hand. You lose it. And sometimes that's the metaphor of, as an artist working on the business side, it is that delicate dance. You can't let go of the sword. You can't think not think about the business if that's your goal, but
yeah,
you can't be so obsessive about it and squeeze on it so tight and go to, and read all the trends and publishers marketplace. And I mean, you could just go nuts. So I think there's just you just be very cognizant of, yep, I've got my hand, I'm there, I'm holding on to this sword or this bird, right? This analogy.
yeah,
And I'm trying to do this artful dance between the two. And I think that's because when I work with or have worked in the past with other authors, what's interesting is that I'll often tell them when they get to the end of the writing, it's like the easy part is now done. Welcome
yeah,
to like the hard part. You thought
yeah,
writing the book was hard? That's the easy part. Now you've got to go market yourself. You got to put it out there. All the things that you probably don't enjoy doing. And maybe this is less so like for thought leaders who are, doing speaking and things like that. But for like lots of writers who are just introverts and just want to, go into their room and write. And now they've got to go be public and shine the spotlight on themselves and be all about, self
mhm,
promotion. It's hard. And that's part of the business side of it as well. So there's
yeah.
definitely a dance to it, but I just think of that I like that metaphor for how I try to not strangle it, but not let it go at the same time.
Well, and I think as the reader and the audience on the other side, you feel that as well. Like as you're saying that, I think of the music industry, and it's almost like you can pick it out immediately when you have an artist that it's usually pop stars in some capacity where they blew up in some regards, but then it's like the next album is it's just pure. It almost feels manufactured, right? Because
Mhm.
you like they're taking what they know will be a hit, but, like, it sucks the soul out of the work,
Yeah.
and it's, like, kind of that and you feel the you just feel it as a listener of the music, like, okay, that's just kind of like all of the others in a way, and, there's a bit of a departure there, so it's kind of a spiritual journey in a way also, right? This kind of work.
I think it's very much an inside out process, and that's why sort of you start with this audience of one, like, this really has to be something that's meaningful, that I would want to read, right?
Yeah,
And then you can balance that with the dance of the business and being smart about how I go about it and all of that.
sure.
But I think outside in is the wrong approach, right? If it's like,
Yeah,
here's the trend I'm going to chase, or here's, I think that's just what gets you in trouble.
yeah. Okay, so you're writing fiction. When does nonfiction enter your life, and when do other authors or other thought leaders and so forth that want to be an author and you're working with them or you're writing they're ghostwriting the book, like when does that whole season of life show up, and what was that like?
Yeah. So one of the things you learn very quickly is how an advance does not take you very far. And when I've shared this with authors, just for those who don't know, right, that an advance is an advance on royalties. So it's you're basically saying here is and advances are even getting harder to get these days, right? So let's say
Yeah,
you've got a $50,000 advance on a book. Well, it's going to be one probably a year to a year and a half before that book even gets published. So so
yeah,
so now you stretch that out for that long length of time. Second is that's an advance on royalties, meaning you will not get a penny until the book has repaid, right,
the
its
bands.
costs, and then you start repaying the royalties back of that percentage that you're getting from the so anyway, it is a long time unless you have a book that just becomes a, instant bestseller or something. So you're going to run out of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
For me, I had, it's kind of just funny. Like I'm gonna take this somewhere. An abundance uh, reminder for me because I was doing some because I'd come out of the leadership training world and I was doing some consulting and things on the side, and there was uh this company had brought in two consultants. We were kind of doing the same thing, and the company, I went out to lunch with the guy that hired us and said, "Hey, I think you are doing the same job as this other person I hired. Do you think I should just give this all to you and not give it to the other person?" And, you're sitting there and you're like, "Man, I need to, like, feed my kids." Like,
Yeah.
I could use all that consulting money or, and that extra whatever. But it just felt wrong, right? And I'm just like, "You know what? No. Like, I don't wanna do that. Like, I really think we can work with this person." Anyway, so it was just this little moral test of just being abundant versus scarce in my
Mm.
thinking. Well, turns out that person, and we worked together and we became friends. Franklin Covey ended up needing an author. I'd worked for Franklin Covey for like a year as an employee, so I knew I had some connections there. But this individual's, this ghostwriting need came up and said, I know this guy who has a writing background, kind of interesting. So it was this person who I could have, shortchanged and had no relationship with
Totally.
that ended up making the introduction to me to Franklin Covey saying, "Yeah, hey, this might be the guy." So it was just a reminder, one, of just being abundant always,
Yeah.
because, it's just a better way to live.
Yeah.
And also good things happen. And then, they approached me and I had not ghostwritten a book before, but I had worked with thought leaders. I'd worked in curriculum development. I had written my own books and they kind of took a chance on me to write this book, and it ended up doing well, for them, and that kicked it off for me being a ghostwriter, and have since
Wow.
written 26, I think, books
Wow.
for others.
Wow. Okay, so two, uh, uh, a statement of gratitude and a question. So, gratitude, thanks for doing that because the reason I have a book agent is because of you, and I know that's how you met, Scott, so thanks
Yeah, yeah. And by the
for
way,
being
Scott was
for
the
being
guy who took a chance on me at Franklin Covey.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
So thanks for doing that.
yeah.
Appreciate that all the way around. Uh, the question though, now, so since you've written, would you say 27? 26?
26, yeah,
26?
26, yeah.
If you just, like, do a bit of a scan of that whole journey and were to give yourself some advice on book 1, what would that advice be?
Um, I I think that this will sound strange, but I think you actually sometimes you go into it with a degree of naivety that serves you. And I
Mm,
think you actually start to overthink and overprocess. And I think the way that I approached that book, and in many ways, not maybe knowing all the rules, not knowing the best practices, not knowing, like, I just leaned into my instinct because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and ended up using this no exit play, which is a philosophy play about the premise is it's Sartre, right? Jean-Paul Sartre, I believe. And it's hell isn't a place, it's other people, is kind of the
okay.
funny premise. But we use that for this book and it became this framework. I don't know that I would have gone there, because it was just so different. But
Yeah.
so I think
That's a great reflection.
my introspection is actually in reverse. It's actually how to make sure you have this little bit of naive enthusiasm going into projects and not overthink them. And so
Yeah.
I think I would want to tap into some of those early, like, I've typed 2 million words since then, which is great. But I think there's something magical with authenticity and just being a little bit of a nonconformist in your thinking, right? And AI is just going
Mhm.
to make that worse, right? AI is just going to
Yeah.
create a platform for everyone who wants it to write their first draft of their book, right? And so
Yeah,
the way that you use it, and I know you're doing some really cool things with it with your book, which is awesome, right? But
yeah,
it just I think it's the opposite. I think it's
yeah,
a little naivety, a little belief in yourself, a little bit of risk taking. I think that's actually what will serve you. So for
yeah.
me, it's I want to
I love
remember
it.
that.
Yeah, for sure, and I think it's just even on the AI topic, 'cause I mean, it comes up often, and even on this side, even though the book is not an AI book,
Right.
just because there's some of the methodology or the research is done because of or through AI, like, it just kinda gets captured in that world, and even Scott and I have had those conversations, like, we've gotta that's why I'm gonna be on the phone with a potential publisher later this afternoon so that they can feel that,
Yeah.
right? Because everyone's freaked out, right? Understandably, I get that as well, but I think it all comes back and this is, I think, what you're saying too, it comes back it comes back to exactly how you answered the opening question, it comes back to the humanity aspect.
Yeah.
Like, we can't forget and even in using AI to ask, people like Albert Einstein and Rumi, like, just ask them, say, "If you were living present day, like, what kind of questions or perspectives would you be taking with the world that we're living in and how fast it's changing?" And it all kept coming back to, "Don't forget to be human while using
Mhm.
these tools. Slow down, ask the questions, bring people together," right? And
Yeah.
that's the part that I think is at risk at being lost when we move so fast. The tech could move fast, that's fine, that's just naturally happening, but it's the conversation and bringing different people together and slowing down and asking the questions, right?
Yep.
And yeah,
Yeah, and bringing your unique story, the one thing I believe in, and there was and sometimes I get asked this, like, do I have a story worth telling? I fundamentally believe every human being does. Doesn't mean it's gonna be a commercially successful story,
mm,
but does it mean it's gonna be a story worth telling? 100%. And there used to be a show, I don't know if it was the '80s or '90s, where this reporter would go into a town and he'd grab a phone book and they'd get to a random, like, just completely random, find somebody, go over to them and interview them because his premise was the same. Everybody has a story, right? That's
yeah,
interesting, worth telling. So I believe that, and the other thing is, is for all the cool things AI is gonna do, it isn't a narrative thinker. It doesn't think in terms of story, right? It thinks in terms of predictable,
yeah,
language models. So, the uniqueness that is you is what you wanna capture as a storyteller, and so when I have worked with authors in the past, that's part of that is just sort of plumbing that, you know to your point, it's kind of that first question you asked is like, let's assume that every human has a story worth telling. Well, let's hear yours and not the filtered. I think this is the story that the commercial success story. What is it?
yeah, yeah,
Your
what's the real
unique
story?
humanness, because that's what connects us, and actually that's the undergirding that makes storytelling so powerful, right? Because even though it's someone else's experience, there's something shared about it.
Yeah,
And even like my favorite definition of fiction is truth telling through lies, right?
ooh,
Is that, yeah, I'm making all this stuff up, but if I'm doing my job right, there's some truth. That's what I'm doing. I'm a truth teller. I'm just lying as I
I
do it.
love that. No, I love that, that's one of those lines that I think is gonna stick with me for the rest of the day, that's a good one, I like it. I do wanna ask you, 'cause a big part of this show and the through line is around the mind, and I'm of the believer that I mean, what did you say you've typed something like 2,000,000 words
I
at
think
this
I
point?
figured out the other day it was like 2 million words, I think.
2,000,000 words. So I'm and this is just my, projections, but I'm of the belief that for those 2,000,000 words to come out in somewhat of a way that makes sense, your mind had to go through times where it was quiet enough to hear what needed to come out and so forth, and that's I'd love to know whether it's while you're writing or just in your life in general, like, what are those non-negotiable rituals or practices that allow your mind to slow down and surface the good stuff?
Yeah, I think that is an awesome question. Because I think most of my, um, for creatives, I think it's when you get too much in your head and you're overthinking things and you're letting your mind run amok. I find what's interesting is, first of all, giving yourself permission. I'm going to say it to suck,
Mm,
there's a famous, and it's like all first drafts are no good. And that's, like every first
yeah,
draft of your book sucks. And you just
yeah,
have to like embrace that. Like I'll fix it. I'll get it better. But we get so critical, and for most writers, you're rereading the first chapter 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, rewriting it, rewrite. One is you have to kind of let go of that critical mind piece and just allow it to be what it is. Even if it sucks, okay, it sucks. I'll fix it, right? But you give
yeah,
yourself that permission. The other piece is, I think what's happened to me so many times where particularly in the fiction writing world, I've just ran into a problem I didn't know the answer to, and I just had to step away from it. I had to like move away. I had to like I say put the pencil down, like metaphorically,
yeah,
right? Step away from the
yeah,
computer. Um, and it was amazing at what would happen if I slept on it, and all of a sudden something happened the morning that I had a solution I didn't have the day before.
mhm,
And so for me, part of that mental practice is giving it time to breathe, knowing that something often happens magically when I just sleep.
sleep, yeah, yeah,
And then knowing my energy is in the morning, that's like the sacrosanct time, like
yeah,
my space, my mental, and I've become a fan of breathing exercises, right? Just
yeah,
changing your, and I know you're a huge proponent of this. I believe in it 100%. I'll do 4 box breathing right before I start to
right,
write and center myself. And if I get stuck, I'll inhale, exhale. Like it is crazy breath work, how it connects to your mind, how it connects to everything.
yeah.
So I think for me, it's just getting out of my head, definitely leaning into breath work and giving myself an opportunity to like sleep on it, like literally sleep on it, because I will think about it differently the next day.
It's always I'm 'cause I do this in just journaling, even just with, like, questions around life or next steps in projects in general, and I learned this from another writer, actually, oh gosh, Cal Fussman. Are you aware of his work? He used to work for Esquire and write,
Sounds
like,
familiar.
those some of their longer pieces. He's interviewed a bunch of US presidents and Muhammad Ali and so forth, and I think he was sharing that story. He was really blocked on the story angle with Muhammad Ali, and it's like, "I just wrote down on a piece of paper before going to bed, 'What do I want to say?'" And went to bed. And
Mm,
ever since then, he said, I'd never just stare at a blank kinda cursor flashing at me, and, to your point, you just go to bed, and it's amazing, right? What surfaces literally, 7 or 8 hours later when you had nothing
yeah.
beforehand.
Yep.
And it just starts to spew out, I've used that not from a writing perspective, but just in general with life, like, when it feels like you're up against something challenging or struggle, and then just do a bit of journaling first thing in the morning like that, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I love
What
it.
else has what else has been really helpful for you, um, whether it's the writing process or just your regular, like, living as a human, in terms of a practice or something that, is a staple for you?
I think for me, it's music. So I play guitar. I think it's finding quiet times to grab the guitar and just, it's almost like active recovery,
Yeah.
and physical is part of it. So like working out, getting to the gym, doing that part of stuff too, right? Because you can be kind of a potato as a writer. So I think it's important to have some exercise, get your heart rate up, all that. But almost that active recovery of doing something creative but in a different field. So writing music,
Mhm.
playing music, I think that lets me recover but also do it in a way that's creative. And then when I write, I'm very cognizant of sound and my environment, right? Like, Stephen King would put his desk in the corner of his room, like no windows, No, like, I wanna see nothing. I have, like, 3 levels of sound canceling headphones in case the batteries ever run out. Like,
Okay.
I really put myself in a cocoon. I really like the different frequencies now, with,
Yeah.
like, meditative
Like
frequencies and
like
focus
binaural
frequencies.
beats and stuff?
Yep, yep, I
Yeah,
will listen to
okay.
that, and so I will try to engineer the environment as, as to make it as cocooned and isolated. Like, obviously, you just want to take the outside world and you just want to go deep and focus with great intensity. And when you hit that kind of flow state where you look up and it's like 4 hours later and you're like, what happened, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
it's so awesome when that happens. And so trying to get there, and it doesn't happen every time with writing. Like, sometimes you're beaten against it. It's a process. That's why I like Stephen Pressfield's book so much. The War of Art. But yeah. So, I mean, it's just being very
amazing.
intentional about my environment, and some, exercise, and then create other creative outlets for me. And then
Yeah,
just relationships. My wife, we love spending time with her and my kids and family, and just making sure everything's in balance. Like, I'm not out of sync.
yeah,
Sometimes you are. There's seasonality, right? Sometimes when you're writing, you have a deadline, whatever, that's going to occupy your time. But making sure you've gotten balance on the other side of that. So I think all
yeah.
that's super important.
Who reads the first draft of your books? Does your wife
Um,
get
you
that
know,
that
you
view or someone else?
so I have a daughter. My
Oh,
kids
yeah,
have
your
always
daughter too
been.
is in this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I have a daughter who's a writer now, and actually, when I sort of moved on from ghostwriting, she's picked that up and been doing that more and more. So she's a very good critic, and I actually, my sons, I wrote my first book because my sons weren't readers and all my girls were, and I was trying to write something I thought my sons would actually read. So my girls are ready-made focus group. They're probably the
okay.
first on the fiction side. They also told me to not try to write YA. They're like, "Yeah, Dad, your love triangle, it's not you." They're like, "Give it up. Like, it's just go middle grade or adult, but don't try to do." So, they gave me good feedback on some stuff. 'Cause
Yeah,
I did try a YA book, and so they're just like, "Yeah, that's not your lane." So it's good.
okay.
But yeah, usually, that using my girls because they're big time readers, so they'll be the first,
Yeah,
for sure.
love it. Last question for you. In present day, kind of where you're at with your writing and just you in general, is there a fiction or nonfiction book that is just speaking at your soul right now of it's gotta come out? Or concept, I guess you could say.
Honestly, I've been more on the film side, so, we didn't even
Mm,
talk about any of that, right? But
yeah, you're right.
which is a
Let's
whole different
let's
discussion. But,
we'll end on that, and we'll do a follow-up
yeah, yeah,
conversation.
yeah. So, having had some success with a film in Hollywood and that, I've been thinking about that a little bit more because it's, 15,000 words to write a screenplay versus,
Gosh,
60,000. So that's pretty easy.
it's
I have
gotta
a
be so
manager.
different.
But I love it. It's such a like minimalist sort of exercise, and how much can I do with little bit of words and little bit of,
Yeah,
like, what can I show versus tell. Anyway, so I have a manager in LA still, and there's some projects there. So I'm focused on that. And I own the rights to a redemption story about a Hell's Angel who,
okay.
he was recruited by Sonny Barger. He was like one of the original Hell's Angels, and he found grace and God through his experience. So, that was a book we finished, and I think I will adapt that into a screenplay. So, for me, I think I'm more focused on that kind of writing right now versus,
Yeah,
on the fiction side. But
that's inspiring. I just love your journey, or, like, how it started, and you can see kind of how it evolved, and then now even what you're sharing right now. Like, it's gotta be one of the I mean, I've never done this, but I'm just assuming it's gotta be a really beautiful feeling to have written a novel, and then now you're also adapting the screenplay because it's like the work lives on in a way, right?
it it's cool, and it's also just artistically interesting because it's such a to your point, it's such a different medium, and
Yeah,
you have to switch into a whole different create. So it's almost like that act of recovery I talked about. Like, the act of
yeah,
writing a screenplay is so different than writing a book. Like, it's almost like resting and recovery to do that. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling my daughter into that with me. So,
Oh,
you know,
cool.
so it's just a fun way to work with your kids and collaborate and do all that.
Yeah. Amazing. This, yeah, we definitely have to have a part 2 on this conversation, I
Right.
think, and jump into screenplays and just follow that journey. But for now, thank you,
Yeah.
so much for this time and sharing all of beautiful wisdom in that mind of yours, and, for sharing your story. Especially as a writer myself, or aspiring writer, I should say, like, it's really refreshing and really helpful. So thank you for that. Thank you, of course, again for helping me personally on the book journey, and with Scott and on the agent side, and yeah, until the next conversation.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the questions. I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm excited for your book to get out into the world because it's going to be awesome.